So we're on the edge of the solstice, so it's between the new moon and the solstice. It's a really especially sensitive time. It's a great time to be doing this specific class. So we've dealt with all the planets and the sun and the moon. So those are the main functions in our levels of consciousness, or functions in our lives. So those planets are moving functional things like an arm or a leg or a head or whatever. They function and do. Everything else is not a function. So when we get to the houses, we're not looking at functions. We're looking at sensitive points and areas of concern. So when we're starting to look at the signs to the angles, the signs to the houses, we're starting to see the seasonal influences of the zodiac and the attitudes as they put their energy down and affect the houses or the angles that we're looking at. So they affect the movements of the earth, or the divisions of the movements of the earth. So we're relating a yearly cycle to a daily cycle. So inside the yearly cycle, there's 365 and a quarter days. So we're tuning into a much faster thing based on the time you're born at. The less you know your time, the less you're going to be able to work with the houses or the angles. But if you don't know someone's time of birth, rather than guess, you start with the planets and the signs and the aspects, and you interpret them. You get lots of information. And you can even when you go into timings, you get lots of information. You're only missing one layer or one database of info. But we just do a couple minutes review, and we're dealing with the day. We're dealing with the rotation of the earth around the day, or where we're standing on the earth. And at any point we're standing, half of the universe, half of the sky is rising and half of the sky is setting. This is our first little drawing on the left here. So there's the half that's rising is projecting, it's coming up. That half is coming from the deepest point beneath us to the highest point above us of the zodiac. And then the other half is going from the highest point of the zodiac down to the lowest point around us from where we're standing in the center or on the earth. This division creates two extreme points. The points where it begins to project and the point where it begins to react. So the half of the sky rising, so the deepest point, that's the beginning point of rising, is the beginning point. It rises, that half rises, but the point that's right highest up in the sky, really, when you're looking south in the northern hemisphere, or north in the southern hemisphere, the sign of the zodiac that's at that north-south line overhead. It's not the meridian directly overhead, it's where that cuts the zodiac. That's the midheaven. And that's the highest point of the zodiac in the sky. And the lowest point is the IC, the point beneath you. The beginnings of your 10th house in the beginning is the MC, and the beginning of your 4th house is the IC. Really, I should say beginning of the 3rd house or beginning of 9th house, but it's still the high point. We've been using in the signs, we use the categories daylight increasing, nighttime increasing, because we have and we see that from the point of freedom versus responsibility, or light and darkness, or creative energy and receptive energy. So in the houses, it changes. It's not freedom or responsibility, becomes rising or setting. And objective, really, it's a second category. We divide half the year, daylight is greater. That's the I, me, independent sign. And the we, us is the fall and winter, which is in the zodiac, which is the responsibility of the team. The we, us, the I, me is the spring and summer. So when we get to the houses, we have above the horizon, whatever's above us, we can see, we can be objective about. It's our social function. We see how many people in the room, we see who's coming, who's going, we see what's going on around us. That's the objective world above us. And the subjective world below us, we can't see, we feel, it's inside of ourselves. So the houses are based between objective functioning and subjective being. These are the two halves. So when we take those two halves, that divides the chart across the ascendant and descendant, from the ascendant up to over to the descendant, to the midheaven, to the descendant. That's the objective functional. And below the horizon, the first 6 houses, that's the subjective personal side, personal being. And when we're looking at this, we're looking at houses, we're looking at circumstances in the world, circumstances in life more. It's more concretized factors. So when we put the two together, you can see just on the third drawing on the top, you can see the objective above, social function, subjective below, and the rising and setting. For some reason, the words didn't come up for the rising, but the rising and the setting is on the inner circle. So when you put this together, it gives you the 4 basic divisions of the year, of the day. The midnight, the ascendant, the midheaven, the descendant. Back to the IC. Now, I guess if we look at this 5th chart at the bottom, maybe I'll blow this up for now, and we'll just see it a bit better. Here, even though the houses on the inner and towards the inside circle are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the same sequence of the sign of the zodiac, it's really not a correct numbering. It should be really numbered the other way. But anyways, tradition has numbered it this way. The sun is at the IC at true midnight, when it's at the lowest point in the sky. Then it moves into the 3rd house and starts moving. You see the arrow moving clockwise. It's moving. The sun is moving into the 3rd house and into the 2nd. And by sunrise, it gets up to the ascendant where we can begin to see it. Then from sunrise, it keeps rising until you get up to noon. Then at noon, that's at the true noon. This is not clock noon. True noon, when the sun's at the highest point in the sky. So then once it hits noon, the sun starts setting. And it starts setting from noon. So we have really in time, we start morning and afternoon. Afternoon represents the setting half of the chart when you're looking at the day of the day. So it's this standard that sets down to sunset. It's on the descendant at sunset. It's on the IC, back to the IC at midnight. So the first check when you're doing someone's chart and you know the time, you see the time, you see what time of day they're born at. The sun has to be in the right quadrant for the chart to be correct. When you're just looking at it, that's something you can see right away. If someone's born in the middle of the night and the sun shows up above the horizon, you entered something in wrong on the computer. Okay, but just as the sun does this, the whole zodiac is moving up. It's not really that the zodiac is moving. It's not really the sun is moving. It's really the earth is turning. So let me just, okay, 1 second. This one will do. Okay, so the earth is turning. And so if you can see this chart, I'm just going to check to make sure you get the audience. Yeah, okay, good. So with the blue line around the inner circle where you see where the numbers are, that's the way the earth is turning. So the earth is turning counterclockwise, the opposite way of the clock. But because the earth is turning, wherever the signs of the zodiac, wherever the planets are, they're rising or setting. They're turning, they seem to be moving clockwise. But really, it's the earth moving counterclockwise that makes the planets, the sun, the moon, and the other planets rise and set. So it starts off being anchored to where the sun is. So in this chart, 6:15 p.m., the sun was setting and just in the 6th house. But once the sun is there, all the other planets are in the houses according to where they are in the circle, and they're also rising and setting. So regardless of what time of day you're born at, half of the sky is rising and half of the sky is setting. So the sun could be rising or the sun could be setting. It depends the time of day you're born at. But you can see what time it is by where the sun is in the houses. That's basically how the idea of the hands of the clock and the clock came around. But this momentum seems a little confusing because the planets and the signs of the zodiac are rising in order, but they're rising clockwise only because the Earth is turning counterclockwise. Okay, so that's the physical dynamic to the world. So what we're working on today, we're going to be working on the 4 angles. This is the cross of life, the IC, the ascendant, the MC, and the descendant. And it's the symbol in mysticism was a cross. Then the heart is the rose in the center of the cross, and in the image of Christ bleeding on the cross, with his heart bleeding. That's the image of the angles of the chart and how we're attached to life and it causes sorrow. That mystical side issue. But when we're looking at our chart, the most important point in the whole houses is the IC. These angles, the IC, the deepest point, the deepest point beneath us, the darkest point. The ascendant, the rising, the midheaven, the highest point in the sky above us, the descendant, the setting point. These are points. They're not functions like planets. They're not like the process of your mind and thinking and being alert. They're not like your choices and your values and what you want or don't want. They're not like your confidence or your memories that have whole functional challenges to get insights into. You have to see the function to see the attitude on the function to see how the planet and the sign works. But these sensitive points are very sensitive points and are key factors in our identity, in our day-to-day life. So the IC, it's the most ignored point in astrology, but most people talk about the midheaven, what status you're going to be, what career, and much astrology, 80% of the writings have probably been about the career you're going to be, what you're supposed to do with your life, where you're supposed to go, what you're supposed to achieve. It's all geared to having a career in midheaven. This is partly because for years it was only the kings and the emperors and the royalty would have their astrologers. It wouldn't come down to the average person. But it's still true for everyone. We all have this status or position out in the world, the MC. And we try to move towards that or react to that. But really, so like the midheaven is your social motivation status point, but the IC is your subjective motivation. Really, it's the most important point. What motivates you? Why bother getting up in the morning? Why do you do the things you do? How could anyone do that? Where are they coming from? What motivates that person? That's the IC. So what motivates us, we can have outer motivations, inner motivations. We can be motivated by anywhere around the wheel. We could be looking for things anywhere around the wheel, but where the IC is, it gives us a clue at the attitude of someone's motivation. It's like the IC is like your umbilical cord to your mom. You come into life, what motivates you? You could say your whole chart or just life or being, but really you have a specific take on this. So the IC in one way, it's like the beginning of the 4th house and the 3rd house, but in the 4th house, it's the mom or the home. It's your inner security. Your inner security. Are you living for inner things or outer things? So we can push our motivation to all sorts of things, but it's not going to be as deep as when we know where we're coming from. So this IC is the point, the midnight point of the chart. It's the deepest point. So when I say the midnight point, you go to sleep and then you wake up somewhere in the middle when you've lost consciousness and you're at the deep point in your chart between the coming home and going to sleep. We lose it, we sleep, we recharge, we forget everything, and we start the next day again. But we start that next day as clear as our motivation is. And we just have certain things we've got to get up and do. Me and my mom were always totally different. My mom would get up and turn on the radio, listen to the news as soon as she got up to wake her up to get her into the world. Me, I turn everything off and I try to sit and meditate and try and be calm and just get at peace with myself before I go out into the zoo. So we had trouble when we were living together. We had different motivations.